In the summer of 2019, a wealthy financier named Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on charges that would shake the foundation of elite society. And his subsequent death in a Manhattan jail cell would only deepen the mystery surrounding one of the most disturbing criminal networks in modern American history. This is a story of Jeffrey Epstein. Not just the man, but the system that protected him, and the powerful people who enabled him, and the web of just straight up corruption that continues to this day. And what you're about to hear is based entirely on documented facts, court records, investigative journalism, and sworn-in testimony. I will not speculate, we'll let the evidence just speak for itself. But by the end, you'll understand why so many people believe there's far more to the story than we've ever been told. And also, I like my life. I really like living, and I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and murder. All things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick, twisted, intellectual, beautiful-minded freak. And today, we are getting into something controversial, but I think something that needs to be spoken about because it's way bigger than any of us know. And I just want to keep talking about it. I don't want it to go under the rug like some other elites really do. So let's just put these people on blast. So without further ado, let's unbuckle our seatbelts, go Mach 5 down the highway, slam on the brakes, and bust through this windshield into this absolute horrifying storm together. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born on January 20th, 1953 in the Coney Island section of Brooklyn, New York. And his father, Seymour, worked as a groundskeeper for the New York City Parks Department. And his mother, Paula, was a homemaker who later worked for an insurance agency. And by all accounts, it was a normal, middle-class Jewish household in Seagate, Brooklyn. And Epstein was exceptionally gifted in mathematics. He skipped 2 grades and actually graduated from Lafayette High School at just the age of 16. And he briefly attended Cooper Union and New York University, but never actually completed a college degree, which is notable for later accounts. Okay, keep that in the back of your mind, because this detail is crucial, because despite having no credentials and no teaching experience and no college degree, in 1974, he was hired to teach mathematics and physics at one of the most elite private schools in Manhattan, which was the Dalton School. So how does a college dropout get hired at a school that caters to children of billionaires, diplomats, and Wall Street titans? Weird. Well, Donald Barr, father of future Attorney General William Barr, was indeed the headmaster of Dalton and a former intelligence officer with the Office of Strategic Services and the predecessor to the CIA. However, Barr resigned in February of 1974 with his departure effective that summer, while Epstein began teaching in September of 1974. This suggests the hiring occurred under internship leadership, though Barr may have influenced the decision before his departure, so he may have put a good word in for Epstein to be a part to teach. But this was just Epstein's entry point into elite society and his first contact with the children of the ultra wealthy. And according to parents at the time, Epstein was reportedly inappropriate with female students, even then. And it just gets significantly worse as we go on. Also, just to preface, I'm talking about Jeffrey Epstein today, but we're also going into what's happening today and why it's important that we're talking about it today, because extremely f***ed up stuff is still happening even after the whole debacle with him, but we'll get into that. And here is where he also made the connection that would change his life forever. Because at a parent-teacher conference, Epstein so impressed the father of one of his students that the man referred him to Alan Greenberg, the CEO of Bear Stearns. And despite admitting he didn't know what a stock or bond was, which I even know, and I'm me, I don't know, seems like pretty basic, But even though he didn't know what that was, what it entailed, anything about it, Within 4 years, he became the youngest limited partner in the firm's history, which is just unheard of, unprecedented, not a thing, just not a thing. But in 1981, Epstein was asked to leave Bear Stearns for what he later described under oath as Reg D violation, a securities law violation, basically. And most people would see this as the end of their Wall Street career. That's like done. You're out of there. You can't get a job there anymore. But for Epstein, it was just the beginning. So after leaving Bear Stearns, Epstein founded his own consulting firm, claiming to work only with billionaires, clients with more than $1 billion in assets, which is absolutely insane to go from basically violating rules to consulting for strictly billionaires. Why is he trustworthy? Again, I don't know. But here's where the story gets murky, because to this day, only one billionaire client has ever been publicly identified, which is suspicious, needless to say. And that person is Leslie Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret and L Brands. And the relationship between Epstein and Wexner was extraordinary and unprecedented. And in July of 1991, Wexner granted Epstein full power of attorney over his finances, which is a sweeping authority that lasted until 2007. And for those of you who don't understand what that means, basically it meant that Epstein could sign checks, buy and sell properties, borrow money, and make legally binding decisions on behalf of one of America's richest men. It's just, again, just unprecedented, doesn't make sense. It is insane to just have some guy be able to sign for, buy this thing, but do all of this stuff, basically a legal guardian, essentially. It's like Jeffrey Epstein was his dad and had to like sign for everything. It's crazy. It's, again, suspicious. And the transfer of Wexner's Manhattan townhouse to Epstein involved multiple stages that reveal the depth of their relationship. Because Wexner purchased this property at 9 East 71st Street for $13.2 million in 1989. Drop in the bucket, right? Wrong. And around 1996, he transferred the title to Epstein for how much do you think? How much do you think he made? He made his basically legal guardian pay for this place. $0. Nothing. Gave it to him for free. Let him transfer that title over. That's weird. And in 2011, the property was formally transferred to an Epstein-controlled entity. And federal prosecutors would later value this mansion, the largest private residence in New York City, the most expensive city to live in the world, basically, at $77 million in 2019. So Epstein just used his connection to Wexner to gain credibility in elite circles. And he would present himself as a, quote, global talent scout for Victoria's Secret, using this role to manipulate young women and girls. And the mansion Wexner gave him for $0 would later be found to contain hidden cameras in every single room, every single bathroom, and every single bedroom, which is disgusting. And also suspicious, because why would you have cameras in every single room? It's almost like you needed them to be able to blackmail people. Like billionaires, maybe? Billionaires that haven't been identified? That's crazy. Because Epstein wasn't just collecting wealth. He was collecting people. Because his social circle was a who's who of global power and influence. And court documents and public records reveal associations with former presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, and Britain's Prince Andrew, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, actor Kevin Spacey, magician David Copperfield, lawyer Alan Dershowitz, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, and former Vice President Al Gore. And obviously, I'm not saying, because there's no evidence currently that any of those people are guilty of anything in terms of Jeffrey Epstein, but you just do what you want with that information. And also, in the scientific community, Epstein cultivated relationships with Nobel Prize-winning physicists, including Frank Wilczek of MIT, Gerard Hooft of Erect University, David Gross and Murray Gell-Mann, who discovered the quark, And he funded conferences attended by theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking. You know this guy? Harvard's Lisa Randall, MIT's Alan Guth, Caltech's Kit Thorne, and at Harvard, his connections included mathematical biologist Martin Nowak, cognitive scientist Stephen Kosling, former Dean Henry Rozovsky, and geneticist George Church. So those names, a lot of those names might mean nothing to you, but essentially I'm just painting this picture of his elite circle. And again, not saying any of these people have done anything, obviously, besides Jeffrey Epstein, because we know he's just a walking waste of everything. But he clearly surrounded himself with elite people and spent time with them. Who knows what they were doing? But that, again, there's the information. Because Epstein hosted exclusive gatherings that mixed science with high society, including a 2006 gravity conference in the Virgin Islands organized by physicist Lawrence Krauss. So Jeffrey was just a fixture at high society events, scientific conferences, and exclusive parties, using his wealth and connections to position himself at the center of elite intellectual and social circles. And all while he was building his criminal enterprise. So starting in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Epstein created what prosecutors would later describe as, quote, a vast network, unquote, for the sexual exploitation of minors. And the operation was sophisticated, organized, and deliberately designed to avoid detection, as we know. But here's how it worked. Epstein and his associates, primarily Ghislaine Maxwell, who we will talk about later, I'll tell you what, would recruit vulnerable girls, many from broken homes, many who had experienced prior abuse specifically, because they were easier to mold, which is so sad and sick. But they targeted girls at malls, schools, even Mar-a-Lago, where one 14-year-old victim was working as a locker room attendant. And the recruitment followed a pattern. Girls were initially offered legitimate work, babysitting, receptionist duties, or what was described as, quote, massage therapy. And they were told they could make good money, meet important people, even get help with their education or careers. They were just taking advantage of these innocent girls that didn't know any better and that had literally nowhere else to go. So once recruited, the girls were gradually groomed, because what started as clothed massages slowly became more and more sexual in nature. And Epstein and Maxwell would normalize the behavior by discussing sexual topics, being present when girls undressed, and just slowly escalated to physical contact. Just monsters. It's incomprehensible. I mean, it is comprehensible because, I talk about these people all the time, but there's something about knowing the people that run things, that are in charge of things, very important things, are these people. It's just a whole nother subject matter. It's a whole nother massive issue. Again, that's why I'm talking about it. And I know we're talking about somebody who's dead, but somebody is alive right now, and that is Ghislaine Maxwell, because she's having a great time in prison right now. But again, we'll talk about that later. But anyway, here's the most insidious part of all of this, because Epstein paid his victims to recruit other girls. So he made his victims get new victims for him. And Maxwell did as well. She was fully part of this. So every time a victim brought him a new girl, both the recruiter and the new victim would be paid hundreds of dollars in cash. And this just created what prosecutors called a, quote, pyramid scheme of abuse, which it absolutely was. It was a self-sustaining system where the victims themselves became unwitting accomplices in their own exploitation. Just incredibly fucked up. And the scope of this network has been documented through multiple investigations. The 2005 to 2006 Palm Beach police investigation identified 34 confirmed minor victims, while investigative journalist Julie K. Brown identified 80 potential victims in her groundbreaking Miami Herald reporting. And court records show victims were as young as 13 to 14 years old, which is heartbreaking. And the controversial 2008 non-prosecution agreement referenced 40 victims eligible for restitution, though the true number is likely much higher. I guarantee it's much higher. I can confidently say that. Possibly in the hundreds or even the thousands. But at the center of Epstein's operation was Ghislaine Maxwell. So Maxwell was the ninth and youngest daughter of British media tycoon Robert Maxwell, and she was Epstein's closest confidant, his primary recruiter, and, according to prosecutors, an active participant in the abuse against minors. And Ghislaine's background is crucial to understanding this entire story. So her father, Robert Maxwell, was a larger-than-life figure, a war hero, and a member of parliament, and a media baron. And he was also widely suspected, and this is suspected, this is alleged, I am not saying this at all, I'm just saying what's suspected, of being an asset of Israeli intelligence, which is Mossad. Again, this is just highly suspected and speculated, but not proven. Covering all my bases here. And it's especially suspicious because when he died mysteriously on November 5th, 1991, his body was found floating in the Atlantic Ocean near his yacht, which was named Lady Ghislaine. And the official cause was ruled as a heart attack, combined with accidental drowning, though the circumstances remain very controversial, which you'll find a lot of during and even now this whole case. There's a lot of weird, mysterious deaths at really good timing in really weird circumstances. And also, he was given a state funeral in Israel attended by prime ministers and Mossad officials. That's not normal if you're not a part of Mossad, but what do I know? I don't know. So with that all aside, whatever, it is what it is. Ghislaine would move to New York, and this is where she would meet Epstein. And there are conflicting accounts about when they first met. Some sources claim Robert Maxwell introduced them in the late 1980s, while mainstream accounts place their meetings in the early 1990s at a New York party. But mainstream accounts seems like they're not very reliable nowadays. So what do I know? And court testimony confirms they were definitely associated by February of 1993, with their relationship initially romantic, but evolving into something more like a business partner. And obviously, enabler. Talking about these topics and just the stressors of life in general definitely take a toll on me and my mental health, and that translates to my physical health sometimes too. And lately, I have been neglecting myself more than usual. But I'm trying to help with that by partnering with a brand that I've actually used before in the past and that has actually helped in this specific issue, and that is with ZocDoc. Because we all have those doctor's appointments you were supposed to make a while ago, that one you meant to book, but you got sidetracked and just completely forgot up until now, or up until recently, like me. Or that dentist appointment for your biannual cleaning, also like me. And I don't know about you guys, but my For You page lately has just been filled with different health trends constantly, like intermittent fasting, red light therapy, solving every one of your problems, and that you should be slamming down cayenne pepper, ginger, olive oil shots every single morning at 6 a.m. But I say we should give the algorithm a rest and actually go to in real life healthcare professionals that could actually help you meet your health goals. And you'll probably be able to book an appointment with ZocDoc before I'm even done this ad read. Because with ZocDoc, it's easy. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. And with ZocDoc, you can book those in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every single specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. And you can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and are highly rated by verified patients. And once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, and you can choose a time slot that works for you and click to instantly book a visit. And appointments made through ZocDoc also happen really fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, which is what I like. I need things to happen quickly, otherwise I forget about them or I just put them off even longer. So that is a super helpful tool for me. Because more often than not, you can even get same-day appointments. And like I was saying, I recently used ZocDoc to make a much-needed dentist appointment and regular doctor's appointment after many months if not years, of not going. Don't judge me. I'm not going to judge you either. And thankfully, I'm cavity-free, which is nice to know. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/CCCM to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/CCCM, ZocDoc.com/CCCM. Thank you so much to ZocDoc for supporting this channel, and let's get back to the video. And Maxwell's role in Epstein's operation was extensive and methodical. According to victim testimony presented at trial, she befriended vulnerable teenagers, learned about their families and needs, and then normalized these massages and nudity, and sometimes undressing herself or being present during the abuse, like we were talking about before. And she scheduled encounters, directed staff, and used her credibility and access to elite spaces to lure victims. So she was very much just as accountable as Jeffrey Epstein. Hence why she's in jail now, but we'll get to that. And evidence included Epstein's flight logs and Maxwell's address books, photos, and Palm Beach household manual reflecting strict control over the residences. So the scope and pattern of Maxwell's conduct spanned properties in Manhattan, Palm Beach, New Mexico, and elsewhere from at least 1994 through to 2004. And victims described how, after initial encounters, they were paid and then encouraged to bring other girls, turning Epstein's scheme into a self-perpetuating pipeline. And victims would describe Maxwell as the madame of the entire operation. Basically, the person who controlled the girls, maintained Epstein's standards through intimidation, and ensured a steady supply of new victims. Just a disgusting human being. And as one survivor put it, quote, Ghislaine controlled the girls. She was like the nuts and bolts of the sex trafficking operation. So in 2005, Epstein's world should have come crashing down because a 14-year-old girl and her parents reported to Palm Beach police that Epstein had SA'd her at his Florida mansion. And the local investigation quickly expanded as more victims came forwards. Case closed. Guy's a creep, right? Wrong, as we know. Because Palm Beach police would build a strong case, identifying dozens of victims and gathering substantial evidence. And the case was referred to the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in South Florida, which was led by Alex Acosta. And federal prosecutors began building what should have been an ironclad case for sex trafficking. But then something unprecedented happened. Despite having evidence of abuse involving dozens of minors, and despite having victim testimony and physical evidence, prosecutors agreed to a secret deal that remains one of the most controversial plea agreements in American legal history. Because the 2008 non-prosecution agreement allowed Epstein to plead guilty to just 2 state charges, which were soliciting prostitution and soliciting prostitution from a minor. Both terrible, but not even close to what was happening behind closed doors. And he would only serve 13 months in county jail. And even then, he was allowed to leave jail 12 hours of the day, 6 days a week for, quote, work release. I can't even, it's so corrupt and f***ed. This is what we know, you know? This is public information. This is what we know. Imagine what we don't. And those are the doors we want to see open. Because for someone who federal prosecutors believed had trafficked dozens of children, this was an extraordinarily lenient sentence, to say the least. But the real scandal was what else the agreement included, which was immunity for 4 named co-conspirators and any unnamed potential co-conspirators, effectively protecting his entire network, which is insane. So anybody that was involved in this, anybody who trafficked these children, were just let off. They said, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. It's not a big deal. You guys, we'll just shove it under the rug. The people won't talk about it. It'll be fine. Maybe a day or 2, and then it'll be fine. I'm talking about it. Who the f*** are those billionaires you're protecting? And there was no notification to victims before the deal was struck. And it was a requirement that the agreement remain secret. and had protection from all federal charges. And the most explosive claim about this deal comes from a single third-hand source. Reporter Vicky Ward has stated that an unnamed White House official told her that when Alex Acosta was being vetted for his cabinet position in 2017, he allegedly reportedly, told members of Donald Trump's transition team, quote, "I was told Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." However, Acosta himself has never confirmed this quote, and a 2020 Department of Justice review found no evidence supporting claims that Epstein was an intelligence asset. This was just something that was apparently said that people apparently forgot about, or he doesn't recall it. So all I can say is that's just allegedly. I gotta be really careful with this stuff. But if it was true, would that make sense? Wouldn't it? But regardless of the intelligence claim's veracity, this statement, if true, again, should have been front page news, literally everywhere. But instead, it was largely ignored by mainstream media. It's almost like media is controlled by people higher up and more elite and billionaires, and that we can't do anything about it. Everything's just kind of fallen into pieces, or should I say falling apart, for them specifically. So after his release in 2009, Epstein did not lay low. Despite being a registered sex offender, he continued to move in elite circles, continued to receive funding from wealthy associates, and according to later investigation, continued to abuse young women and girls. And he maintained his lavish life with homes in Manhattan, Palm Beach, the Virgin Islands, New Mexico, and Paris. And his private island in the Virgin Islands, known locally as, quote, Pedophile Island, was equipped with a mysterious temple-like structure and reportedly wired throughout with, you guessed it, hidden cameras. Because what do cameras do? Record. And what can you do with recordings of crimes? Blackmail. And who's committing these crimes? The elite and billionaires. And who can control these people? We don't quite know that exactly yet, but it's all, again, just a rabbit hole of horror. So Epstein continued to receive hundreds of millions of dollars from wealthy associates, including Leon Black, the billionaire co-founder of Apollo Global Management. And Senate Finance Committee investigations have revealed that between 2012 and 2017, Black paid Epstein $170 million. $12 million more than Apollo's board investigation had identified. And these payments included $56.5 million in 2013, $70 million in 2014, and $30 million in 2015, ostensibly for tax and estate planning services, despite Epstein lacking relevant professional licenses, aka probably wasn't for estate tax and planning. Yeah. And the U.S. Virgin Islands' $62 million settlement with Leon Black in exchange for criminal immunity explicitly acknowledged that, quote, Jeffrey Epstein used the money Black paid him to partially fund his operations in the Virgin Islands. And this provides official confirmation of how Epstein's consulting fees supported his criminal enterprise. So they just said they were paying for something legal-ish, but he was actually just using it to fund his pedo ring, essentially. And on top of all that, major financial institutions also failed in their oversight. Because Bank of America waited 7 years to report suspicious transactions to the Treasury Department, while multiple banks continued processing large transfers despite Epstein's sex offender status, which again, more people in charge that are just sending all the red flags of why wouldn't they report that? It's pretty weird. And meanwhile, investigative journalist Julie Brown at the Miami Herald was building the case that would eventually bring Epstein down. And her, quote, Perversion of Justice series exposed how the 2008 deal had cheated his victims out of justice and identified approximately 80 survivors of Epstein's abuse. And the public outrage from Brown's reporting eventually led to federal prosecutors in New York reopening the case against Epstein because too many people knew now. Now they actually had to do something about it. Crazy how that works. Which it actually is crazy how that works because that shouldn't be the case. Criminals should be held accountable for what they do, whether one person knows it or a billion people know it.
Breaking news, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein arrested on new sex trafficking charges. The accusations date back to the 2000s and involve alleged crimes in New York and Palm Beach, Florida.
So on July 6, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey after returning from Paris on his private jet. But this time, the charges were federal: sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking. So Epstein, obviously, pleaded not guilty, but was denied bail, thank God. And U.S. District Judge Richard Berman ruled that Epstein posed an extreme flight risk and danger to the community. And he would be housed at a Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, a federal facility that typically holds high-profile defendants awaiting trial. So on July 23rd, Epstein was found semi-conscious in his cell with injuries to his neck. And prison officials said it appeared to be a end-of-life attempt, though some speculated he had been attacked. This is where we're getting into conspiracy territory soon, but I'm only going to state the facts, and then you can do with that what you will. All right. But as a result of all that, he was placed on the end-of-life watch. But 6 days later, only 6 days after he did an attempted end-of-life, psychological staff removed Epstein from the end-of-life watch following a psychiatric examination of sorts, and he was returned to a special housing unit where protocol required that he have a cellmate and be checked on every 30 minutes. And conveniently, these protocols were not followed on the night of August 9th to 10th in 2019. And the DOJ Office of Inspector General's June 2023 report, based on 127,000 documents and 54 witness interviews, confirmed multiple Bureau of Prisons policy violations. That's insane and extremely suspicious. So on August 9th, Epstein's cellmate was transferred and no replacement was brought in, like it said it had to do. That was violated. And then the guards assigned to check on him that night, Tova Knoll and Michael Thomas, fell asleep at their desk and spent time browsing the internet while falsifying over 75 log entries covering approximately 8 hours. Violation and suspicious. And security cameras positioned outside Epstein's cell also conveniently malfunctioned that same night. And at 6:30 a.m. on August 10th, guards found Jeffrey Epstein hanging in his cell. And he was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital at 6:39 a.m. And the official autopsy would rule it a end of life by hanging. But Dr. Michael Baden, a forensic pathologist hired by Epstein's family to observe the autopsy, later stated that the injuries to Epstein's neck were more consistent with homicide by strangulation than end of life by hanging, because Baden pointed to 3 fractures in Epstein's neck, including a broken hyoid bone, which he said was, quote, extremely unusual in end-of-life hangings. However, Baden himself cautioned that his observations were, quote, not conclusive, and the NYC medical examiner maintained the end-of-life ruling. So do with that information what you will. Multiple official investigations by the FBI, DOJ, OIG, and medical examiner have all upheld the determination of end of life, despite the extremely unusual circumstances, extremely suspicious unusual circumstances. And the guards, Noel and Thomas, were initially charged with falsifying records and conspiracy, but prosecutors dropped all charges against them in December of 2021 after they completed community service and cooperation agreements. How convenient, yet again. So no one has ever been held truly accountable for the institutional failures that allowed Epstein's death to occur. So again, just unbelievable and insane. So with Epstein dead, allegedly, I don't know anything at this point, attention turned to his co-conspirators, primarily Ghislaine Maxwell. And she largely retreated from social functions by late 2015 and was rarely seen in public after 2016. And after Epstein's July 2019 arrest and August 2019 death, the search for Maxwell became a multi-month operation involving electronic and financial tracing and surveillance and informants. They were dead set on getting her, which is again, like, nobody's been doing anything at this point to get any sort of justice. So the fact that they're going so hard for Ghislaine, it just sends all the red flags up. Like, she has all the information. She's like the top dog other than Epstein, who's now dead, apparently. So I can't even imagine the atrocities that she has seen or committed for her to go into hiding in a multi-million-dollar mansion, which I'll get to, and then be caught by the U.S. government. Once you go in this rabbit hole, you can't come out. So investigators tracked her through encrypted communications and an all-cash real estate transaction, which is multi-million dollars, through an LLC. And they discovered that she had used a phone registered to GMax and was linked to a remote multi-million-dollar residence in New Hampshire purchased in December of 2019. Weird timing. And she was tracked there through an entity that concealed the buyer. So she really didn't want to be found or face any sort of consequences for the atrocities she committed. And the property, which was dubbed the, quote, tucked away, it's like they're just like laughing at our faces, you know, just like all these little just innuendo, like these little sayings and names, and these, it's like they put it right in your face like a joke. But anyway, the tucked away house was surrounded by forest and offered limited sightlines. So on July 2nd of 2020, the FBI and local law enforcement executed a coordinated arrest operation at the Bradford, New Hampshire property. And according to the arrest affidavit, Maxwell initially retreated deeper into the house when agents arrived, which is crazy. You have the FBI at your house and you're still trying to get away like a fucking dumpster rat running away from fire. But during the arrest, agents found a phone wrapped in foil on a desk described as a, quote, a seemingly misguided effort to evade detection. She wrapped this phone up in tinfoil so they wouldn't detect where she was. It didn't work, but she tried. So Maxwell was arrested and she was charged in United States versus Maxwell with multiple counts, including conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, conspiracy to transport minors to engage in illegal sex acts, transportation of a minor with intent to engage in illegal sex acts and trafficking of a minor, and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors. That's, again, insane and disgusting. Just a vile human being. There's no argument that she wasn't a massive part of this. Like, just because she's a woman, she couldn't be capable of this, or because Epstein had this on. No, it was literally, she was a monster, and she was in this life before, and she continued into it because it was extremely profitable, and probably because she is a disgusting sadist, just as much as Epstein and all the other billionaire elites that we don't know the names of that committed all these things. And also, 2 perjury counts from 2016 civil depositions were severed for separate proceedings. So Judge Allison J. Nathan denied Maxwell's bail requests repeatedly in 2020 and 2021, finding her an acute flight risk given her access to significant resources, multiple citizenships, which was US, UK, France, and demonstrated ability to live in secrecy. She could live like a secret agent, basically. And Maxwell's jury trial began in November of 2021 in the Southern District of New York. And the prosecution's case included testimony from 4 accusers, 3 using pseudonyms, Jane, Kate, and Carolyn, and Annie Farmer using her real name, who described abuse in the 1990s to 2000s and Maxwell's direct involvement in recruitment, grooming, and facilitation. So the prosecution presented corroborating physical and documentary evidence, including flight logs, photos of Maxwell and Epstein, household manuals, phones and address books, travel and property records, and staff testimony showing Maxwell's managerial control over everyone. And after approximately 5 days of deliberations on December 29th, 2021, the jury found Maxwell guilty on 5 of 6 counts, including sex trafficking of minor and related conspiracies. And she was acquitted on 1 count of enticement of a minor. That's 1 minor. All the other ones guilty, which I don't know how she got off on that one, but I don't know anything at this point. So on June 28, 2022, Judge Nathan sentenced Maxwell to 20 years imprisonment and imposed a $750,000 fine. But here's what's remarkable about the trial. Because despite evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to other powerful men, despite testimony about his relationship with princes and presidents and billionaires, not a single other person was charged. And Maxwell was convicted of sex trafficking, but apparently trafficking victims to no one else besides Epstein? Where were all these children being trafficked to? All of them were to Epstein, even though we have flight logs of tons of elites going to that island. It's strange, no? It's strange, yes. And this has left many victims and their advocates extremely frustrated. Because as one victim's attorney put it, quote, "How do you traffic children to nobody?" Following sentencing, the Bureau of Prisons initially designated Maxwell to FCI Tallahassee, a low-security federal facility for women in Florida. And if that wasn't bad enough, a development that has outraged Epstein's victims and just the general public like you and me, Ghislaine Maxwell was transferred on August 1st, 2025 to federal prison camp Bryan in Texas, a minimum security, quote, camp that houses other high-profile white-collar criminals. And this placement violated Bureau of Prisons guidelines requiring sex offenders to serve at least low-security facilities. But Maxwell received a special waiver. And federal prison camp Bryan has been nicknamed, quote, Club Fed for its extremely relaxed conditions. She's basically at a day spa. She trafficked children. I can't wrap my head around it. But if you want a picture of what this place is like, this horrible place, inmates sleep in dormitory-style housings, have access to yoga classes and puppy training programs, and various recreational activities. If you see pictures of it, it's crazy. She's like happy, smiling, she's having a good time. And some areas of the facility don't even have fences. So inmates could literally walk away if they chose to. And what's really interesting, or I would say suspicious, is that the transfer came just days after Maxwell met with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche for 9 hours over July 24th to July 25th in 2025 at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Tallahassee. And during these sessions, under limited proffer immunity, Maxwell answered questions about, quote, about 100 different people. And according to her lawyer, reportedly providing information about Jeffrey Epstein and people associated with him. And Blanche, who previously served as Trump's criminal defense attorney, was confirmed as the 40th Deputy Attorney General on March 5th, 2025. Weird. So the timing of Maxwell's prison transfer occurring approximately 1 week after her extensive cooperation with the DOJ has raised questions about whether Maxwell received preferential treatment in exchange for information, even as officials have not publicly tied the move to cooperation. It's just all, you read about it, it's really there. Like it's all there, you know? I mean, not all of it. Quite literally, I'd say probably 1% of it's there. But even just the 1%, 1% and how horrifying it all is, I can't even imagine what's behind each door to find out Epstein's list and everybody involved and how it's all controlled and the blackmail involved and all these. I mean, we're going to get into more, but it's just scary. It's very, very scary. And for the families of Epstein's victims, seeing his chief accomplice move to what amounts to a luxury prison is another slap in the face. And as one family member stated, quote, "It is with horror and outrage that we object to the preferential treatment convicted sex offender Ghislaine Maxwell has received." So the facts are pretty straightforward. Maxwell was convicted of federal sex trafficking crimes after a full jury trial and received a 20-year sentence. Yet the perception of unacceptable leniency persists for two reasons. One, moving a convicted sex trafficker of minors from a low-security prison to a minimum-security camp runs counter to public expectations about proportional punishments. And two, Maxwell's conviction did not result in any criminal prosecutions of other alleged perpetrators or beneficiaries of the trafficking scheme as a whole. So nobody else was held accountable. And as survivors and observers note, convicting a facilitator of trafficking to no one, remember, no one else was involved. It was just those two. Just deepens mistrust and makes any subsequent leniency in confinement appear especially egregious and, say it with me, suspicious. But let's move on to the people in charge, shall we? So during his 2024 presidential campaign, Donald Trump repeatedly promised to release the Epstein files, the government documents related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and associates. And this was a popular promise among his supporters, many of whom believed the government was engaged in a cover-up to protect powerful people implicated in Epstein's network. What a crazy idea. Turns out it's not. It's very real. And we were very right. And Trump was quote to say,
"The list of clients that went to the island has not been made public."
Yeah. It's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. But yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
And other Trump administration officials made similar promises. Kash Patel, for example, now FBI director, previously said the list was being kept secret, quote, because of who's on that list. Why? So they can't be held accountable? Why would they be kept secret? Because people on the list are people we know, and then people would actually get in really big trouble and we would distrust the entire government? Oh, crazy. And not even just the government, celebrities, scientists, Nobel Prize winners. I don't know, but it seems like could be a lot of really important people in charge of really important stuff that would have to face really bad consequences. And Attorney General Pam Bondi had claimed she received, quote,
"Yeah, the FBI, they're reviewing, there are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims. And no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now."
But after taking office, the Trump administration completely reversed course. Weird. And on July 6th to 7th, 2025, the Department of Justice released an unsigned memo stating that, quote, no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. And the memo claimed there was no, quote, incriminating client list. Just disappeared, guys. Thanos into thin air. Where'd it go? That's crazy. We were promised this. They said it was on their desk. They said there's thousands of videotapes and everything. It's just gone. It's just gone. Forget about it. We don't need to know about that. Close the door, shut the blinds, shut the fuck up, is what the government's saying to you and to me. Nah, I'm gonna keep talking. And they also said that there was no evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. And this reversal reportedly followed Attorney General Pam Bondi briefing Trump in May 2025, and his name appeared, quote, multiple times in the Epstein files. And according to Wall Street Journal and CNN reporting citing White House sources, when asked about this reversal, Trump became visibly agitated.
And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of Saturday?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
To be fair, he is a f***ing creep, but is it unbelievable? Not really. People were convicted and charged and killed or ended their own life. I don't know. So why wouldn't we be talking about it? And he would later claim on his Truth social platform that the Epstein files were created by, quote, Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration. He's just like, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing? And I'm not, I'm going to say this. It's probably bad stuff happening everywhere. So I'm just going to choose to not trust a lot that's going on most of the time. But you can choose whatever you want to do, But I think there's a lot of pedophiles in charge, and it disgusts me. And I want to know. We want to know who's on that list. And we want to know who can actually be held accountable for this stuff, because we deserve to know. So I digress. Let me continue. So on August 5th, 2025, the House Oversight Subcommittee issued subpoenas to the DOJ and 10 high-profile figures, including Bill and Hillary Clinton and multiple former attorney generals. And 8 senators, led by Chuck Schumer, have demanded file releases by August 13th, 2025, while House Democrats successfully forced Republican votes on transparency measures before Speaker Mike Johnson sent the House home early. So many of Trump's own supporters have expressed outrage at what they see as another government cover-up, which is fair. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the Epstein case is the mounting circumstantial evidence of his connections to intelligence agencies. And while definitive proof remains elusive, the documented facts raise serious questions about what Epstein was really doing and who was protecting him. And the most concrete suspicious evidence is the discovery of an expired Austrian passport with a false name found in Epstein's safe, along with $70,000 cash and 48 diamonds. And the passport contained Epstein's photo, but listed his residence as Saudi Arabia and contained stamps showing entry to France, Spain, the UK, and Saudi Arabia in the 1980s. And this type of documentation, for those of you who don't know or realize, is typically used by intelligence operatives. And CIA Director William Burns did meet with Epstein in 2014 while serving as Deputy Secretary of State. And the CIA confirmed these meetings, but claimed they were about Burns', quote, transition to private sector, and described them as, quote, career advice. Though this explanation has been obviously met with skepticism. And putting my hand up, I'm skeptical, given the fact that everything else is basically bullshit, but this is all alleged. Just allegedly, I'm not saying anything, all right? And Ari Ben-Menash, a former Israeli intelligence officer, has stated that Epstein worked for Israeli intelligence running a, quote, honey trap operations, which is blackmail of powerful people using young girls. That sounds correct to me. But again, this is all alleged. This is not confirmed. But he did state it. I'm just repeating what the guy said, all right? But even though he said it, these claims remain unverified. And the former Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, categorically denied all intelligence connections in 2024, calling such claims, quote, totally false. Which again, I'm just not believing. Just not believing what a lot of the government's saying, like anywhere, anytime. But all right, it's alleged, it's not verified, I'm gonna move on. But you make your own thoughts about that. And Epstein's closest associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, was the daughter of Robert Maxwell, who is widely believed to be a Mossad asset. And when Robert Maxwell died, he was given a state funeral in Israel, attended by prime ministers and intelligence officials, like we said before. Just recapping that for you to kind of make it all make sense. And multiple victims and witnesses have testified that Epstein filmed sexual encounters in his homes, which were wired throughout with hidden cameras, as we talked about before. And all of that, just to recap it, is textbook intelligence tradecraft, gathering compromising material for blackmail purposes. So let's just talk statistics, okay? The statistical odds of all these connections being coincidental are astronomically small. And as one intelligence expert put it, quote, this is not how normal sex traffickers operate. This was something else, something bigger. Which again, it just makes it all the more horrifying. But one of the most persistent questions in the Epstein case is, where is the client list? Because if Epstein was trafficking girls to powerful men, who were those men? And the January 2024 unsealing of 4,553 pages from the Giuffre versus Maxwell civil case revealed approximately 150 names, though many appeared only as potential witnesses or in passing references. But the documents confirmed that Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's plane at least 27 times, and that Donald Trump appeared in contact lists, though no wrongdoing was alleged against Trump in these documents. So I'm not saying anything. You can think whatever you want. I'm not saying anything, okay? I don't know anything. I like my life. I like living, by the way. And Eternal Genery Pambondi's July 2025 claim that no client list exists directly contradicts her earlier statements. Because in February 2025, she explicitly said the client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review. Play the clip.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
Now she claims she was referring to all the files generally, not a specific client list. World, stupid world, every person in the United States and everywhere in the world. You guys just misunderstood me. I know we were specifically talking about the Jeffrey Epstein list, but I was thinking about something else. I was thinking about what I had for breakfast and I just got it all mixed up. So water under the bridge, right? Wrong. We're flooding the bridge right now, bitch. Because we know there were other participants. Court documents from civil cases confirm that Epstein's operation involved multiple powerful men, and victims have testified about being trafficked to various individuals, though many of these cases have been settled out of court with non-disclosure agreements. They paid all these victims away, which I'm never going to judge a victim at all, but that's how it's been kept quiet for so long, and that's why we know so little, is because it's been all private. And the government's claim that they found no evidence of blackmail is contradicted by documented cases. Bill Gates' own spokesperson admitted in 2021 that Epstein had, quote, tried unsuccessfully to leverage, unquote, his knowledge of Gates' extramarital affair, quote, to threaten Mr. Gates. Can you hear my eyes blinking? What the fuck? So this is quite literally an admission of attempted blackmail of one of the most influential, important people in the world, supposedly. But multiple sources have confirmed that Epstein kept detailed records, photos, and videos of his activities. And the FBI seized over 70 computers, hard drives, and storage devices from his properties. So what happened to all that evidence? And a particularly tragic development occurred in April of 2025 when Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most prominent accusers who had received a $500,000 settlement from Epstein in 2009 and an undisclosed amount from Prince Andrew in 2022, died by end of life in Western Australia. And her death adds just another devastating layer to the ongoing impact of Epstein's case of survivors. Because the pattern of deaths surrounding the case is particularly disturbing. Jean-Luc Brunel, a French modeling agent and close Epstein associate, was found dead by end of life in his Paris jail cell on February 19, 2022. And Brunel, who headed several modeling agencies, including Karen Models, was facing charges of rape of minors and sex trafficking in connection with the French investigation into Epstein's network. And victims had alleged that Brunel recruited girls from Europe and South America for Epstein, with one witness testifying that, quote, Jeffrey Epstein had told me that he has slept with over 1,000 of Brunel's girls. Just another waste of oxygen, but suspicious death. Because, like Epstein, Brunel was found hanged in his cell using bed sheets, and like Epstein, he died before facing trial. And his death devastated victims who had waited years for justice. And as Virginia stated after his death, quote, the end of life of Jean-Luc Brunel, who me and countless girls and young women, ends another chapter. I am disappointed that I was not able to face him in a final trial and hold him accountable for his actions, unquote. And for many victims and just observers, the pattern of key figures dying by end of life before trials has only deepened suspicions about the case, obviously. Because two of the main three figures in this international sex trafficking network both died by hanging in their jail cells before they could testify about the broader network or reveal information about other participants. Weird. Suspicious. It just all adds up at the same time as doesn't add up. But the Jeffrey Epstein case isn't just about one man's crimes. It's a window into how power really works in America. And who knows, maybe the world. How wealth and connections can buy protection, how justice can be bought and sold and how the powerful protect their own. And just consider the pattern. Epstein was protected by a sweetheart plea deal in 2008, and he continued his activities for over a decade with impunity, and when finally arrested, he died under suspicious circumstances with multiple institutional failures. And his co-conspirator was convicted, but only for trafficking to him. No other billionaires and no clients or co-conspirators have been charged, and the government now claims there's nothing more to investigate, guys. It's gone. It never existed. Forget about it. Nah, because we got promises that this information was going to be released, and those promises have now been broken. And Jeffrey's chief accomplice has been moved to a luxury prison for just the cherry on top, just the giant middle finger to all of us that are speculating. And major financial institutions failed in their oversight duties, and all while victims continue to suffer while perpetrators remain protected. So this isn't behavior of a justice system working properly. This is the behavior of a system designed to protect the powerful, aka the government and untouchable elite, at all the expenses of the powerless, aka us. And the victims in this case were vulnerable, young girls, some as young as 13, and they deserve protection and they deserve justice. Instead, they got a system that just prioritized comfort and protection of their abusers over their rights and dignity. And the questions that remain are as important as the facts we've already established. And those questions are, if Epstein was just a lone predator, why did he receive such extraordinary protection from the justice system? And if there was no broader network, why was Maxwell convicted of trafficking at all? And trafficked to whom besides Epstein? And if there are no other participants, why did the plea deal grant immunity to, quote, known and unknown co-conspirators? And if there's no intelligence connection, why was Alex Acosta reportedly told that Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence? Again, allegedly, unconfirmed. And if there's no blackmail operation, why did Epstein wire his homes with hidden cameras literally everywhere? And if there's nothing to hide, why won't the government release the full files? And why did a presidential candidate promise transparency and then completely reverse course in office? And why the fuck is Ghislaine Maxwell now living in luxury while her victims continue to suffer? And you'd think I'm done with the questions, but I'm not. Because also, why did financial institutions continue to process suspicious transactions for a registered sex offender? And what happened to the 70+ computers and storage devices seized by the FBI? These aren't conspiracy theories. They're not. These are legitimate questions based on documented facts, court records, and sworn-in testimony. And the American people have a right to answers. Everyone has a right to answers. And the Jeffrey Epstein case represents one of the greatest failures of the American justice system in modern history. A wealthy predator was allowed to abuse hundreds of girls, if not thousands, over decades while being protected by powerful people and institutions that should have stopped him and are probably still active to this day. And the case reveals uncomfortable truths about how power really works in America. It shows us that there are different sets of rules for different classes of people. It demonstrates that wealth and connections can literally buy immunity from consequences. And recent developments in 2025, from Maxwell's luxury spa, puppy palace prison transfer, to the Trump administration's reversal on transparency, show that the cover-up just continues. And the political establishment, regardless of the party, left, right, middle, whatever, seems more interested in protecting itself than delivering justice to victims, because nobody's talking. Nowhere in any sort of political power. But perhaps most importantly, it shows us that the system is capable of protecting itself, even when that protection comes at the expense of justice for victims. So the story of Jeffrey Epstein is not over, I hope, because his victims continue to seek justice, as do all of us. And investigative journalists continue to uncover new information, and congressional committees are issuing subpoenas, and the American people, or at this point, let's just say the world, continue to demand answers. And the powerful scumbags, disgusting monsters, would prefer that we just forget about Jeffrey Epstein. Forget about it. that we just move on to other stories, other scandals that conveniently happen. They want us to just accept that justice has been served, that the case is closed. But justice has not been served, and the case is not closed. And we must not forget, and we have to keep talking about it. Because if we allow this to be swept under the rug, if we accept that some people are simply above the law, that we accept that there are no limits to what the powerful can get away with. And the victims of Jeffrey Epstein deserve better. And the American people deserve better, and the truth deserves to be told.